To me, I make a distinction between innovation and invention. So invention is creating a new method, a new technology. The innovator is the person who takes that to market. So fundamentally, the innovator's job is to find a big enough market for a new solution to fit into. Now, oftentimes the mistake that people make is they start with the solution and try to brute force it into the market. But a good innovator tries to first search for the market and then finds the right solution that fits into that. I would say there are a set of mindsets that we teach. So one of the fundamental ones that we always like to start with is love the problem, not the solution. And the reason that's important is that when we start with the solution, we try to brute force the market. That's a bit backwards, not always the easiest thing to do. Even if you're starting with an invention, important to understand the customer's current state, the problems they're running into, and that's just a better place to make the innovation fit. The second thing I'll talk about is thinking more holistically about the business model. So the job of the innovator is building a business model at the end of the day. So a solution is a part of that puzzle, but you have to see how does money get captured, how scalable is the model, how repeatable is the model. So those are other aspects they have to look at. The last thing I'll say there is making evidence-based decisions, is that markets are unpredictable. If we could all predict what was going to happen, there would be no breakthrough innovations. So to actually create breakthrough, one has to be ready for failure or unexpected outcomes. And so this is where the experimental mindset comes into play. I'll go back to the famous Thomas Edison quote. When he tried the light bulb and tried 10,000 times, his friend said, "You should give up." He said, "No, I now know 9,999 times that it won't work." So he got the one time that it did work. The biggest mistake innovators make is prematurely falling in love with the technology or solution. And so they then spend a lot of their waking moments trying to find the right resources, the right funding to bring an idea to life, only to realize that they may be bringing a product to market that nobody wants. So that to me is the top reason why new products generally fail. So for existing companies, for big companies, the hardest thing to really innovate is unlearning some of the skills that they have grown to specialize around. So they have a business model that works, they know how that business model works. But when we talk about innovation, it's about sometimes doing the old job, but in a new way. And that requires new skills to be learned. It requires fundamentally challenging new business models. And it's just human nature. If we use the antibody metaphor or analogy here, when you're trying to create something new, the system fights the new way. And so that, in many ways, is the biggest challenge that larger companies have when they're trying to innovate. I guess sleep is probably the most common thing that I like. So I like to sleep. I strongly believe in getting at least 7 hours, 8 hours if I can. Sounds very simple, but I find too many people, not sleeping long hours. But outside that, one of the other things that I spend time doing is yoga. So I do a lot of hot yoga, and that definitely helps. It's both a meditative practice, but you get enough physical exercise. And being a lean practitioner, I like the fact that you can do two things at one time. Being a deliberate practitioner, I always look for role models of people who have done what I may be trying to do in better ways, so learning from them. So it could be everyone from trying to study Steve Jobs, and I know that's used a lot, but for me it's not so much Steve Jobs, the mythical character, but trying to understand how he became that. So I always try to find origin stories, what were things he was doing, how he practices. When he pitches, we all are amazed by how eloquent he is, but he puts hundreds of hours into them. So I'm more interested in trying to understand that. Of people more recent, Elon Musk is a very interesting person. Of course, no one is perfect. He's got his ups and downs, but to me, what I like about him the most is his non-lateral thinking. He thinks a lot in 10Xs. He'll take a problem and come at it in a very different way, and that's a very powerful skill to have. Can't live without, I would probably say my laptop. So again, I travel a lot, I work a lot on the fly, and so to me, a small laptop is good. I have a Mac Air. I like the form factor, it works really well, and that's probably one of my most used device. So being a writer, I do have one. It's called Ulysses. It's actually a writing app. It's one of those no clutter. You can just blank the screen out and just write. So I use that a lot for taking down quick ideas or even scripting out things that I need to get out. So that's probably my most power used app. Yeah, so I get asked that question a lot, and I tell people the same thing: is if I knew that, then I probably would be doing a very different job. At the same time, I find that you can pick really any industry, and once you start studying, and oftentimes the more boring the industry, the more prime it is for disruption. Unfortunately, many startups find the boring aspect not exciting, so they don't go there, but you can pick a boring industry, and if you look, there's a reason why. It's because people are just okay with the status quo, and those are often prime for disruption. So right now I look at a lot of life insurance, like that's a big industry being changed. Healthcare has been being disrupted for a while, education, energy. So there's really I think all industries are prime to some extent. The question really is studying them and bringing in one's passion. Like if you are passionate about energy, go and study energy and you'll find areas for disruption. If you're passionate about insurance, go study that. So I tend to organize my work days very specifically. So I'm very accomplishment driven. So I try to free my mornings up. So I didn't used to be a morning person, but I wake up earlier to try to get at least a 2-hour block of time where I have uninterrupted work. I don't turn on any devices, no email, none of that stuff. That's when I do some of my maker time type of work. I have a daily routine then of taking my kids to school, so I spend some time with them, the family. Once they're off in school, I come back and do usually another 2 or 3 hour stretch of maker time work. And then I open up to the outside world. And so that's when I start taking meetings, and usually that's lunchtime or beyond, and that's when I start working even with my team. But that's generally how my days go, is that there's a reserved block of time in the morning where I can do these kinds of deep work. And then in the rest of the day, I do shallow work. And in between there could be yoga on some days. So that could be like a 1 hour exercise session in there. So the most admired brands of mine, this maybe is like a cliche answer, but would be a company like Apple, not so much for what they're doing now, but their ability to find 3 big waves in a row. We talk about big waves as being these big products that change markets. They create new categories, and Apple did 3 of them with the iPod, with the iPhone, and the iPad. And being able to do that it's hard to do it once, hard to do it 3 times. It's near impossible to do it 3 times. So that's one of the reasons why that company is right up on top. The next one I would say is some of the companies that tend to take a more experimental approach to finding ideas. I would put companies like Facebook and Google and Intuit even in that category. They are comfortable enough, the leaders are comfortable enough to say, we don't really know where the next big idea is going to come from, and they spend and build a culture in the company of rapid experimentation, of going out there and finding big ideas through discovery, which to me is a humbling leadership example to follow.